Welcome to HFY Hero Fi, where the ordinary become extraordinary. Here we celebrate the fearless, the champions who rise against impossible odds. From tales of distant galaxies to the darkest corners of the supernatural, HFY Hero Fi brings you the ultimate stories of heroism. If you believe you've been chosen, heed the call and subscribe now. Let us Hero Fi you and come with us on our next adventure. Days blurred into a grim procession as the guardians of the realm plodded through the scraggly woodland. The trees grew twisted, their branches like grasping hands. The air smelled of wet earth and decay, and the fog returned each morning as if it had claimed this land as its own. They made camp beneath a cluster of bent pines, and there, half buried in mud, they found a rotting signpost. 2 arrows pointed in different directions. One read Veradin in faded script. The other had a strange mark like an ancient rune carved into it. Elias stared at the blank arrow as if it whispered his name. He felt the spirit within him stir. "Left," he said suddenly. Alba blinked. "Left where? That's not even a road. It says Veradin is the other way." "It is the way we should go," Elias insisted, voice strained. He pressed a hand to his temple. "The Lord intends for us to go this way." Wolfrid studied the woods that appeared darker along the path Elias had suggested. "Are you sure?" Elias's eyes flashed. "Yes. Now let's go." Alba's gaze moved from Elias to the rune on the sign. "I trust you, but I still remember you getting us lost in the woods on our way to King Leonard." Elias swallowed hard. "That was different." Alba raised an eyebrow. "I don't agree, but I'll follow you. Just to make sure you don't get yourself killed." "All right. Fearless leader, lead the way," Wolfrid said. The land began to sink as their horses continued down the fog-choked path. Up ahead, the trees thinned. The air grew, however, even more foul. Soon, the ground gave way to swamp. The water was black with reeds, and abandoned cottages slumped like corpses along the swamp's edge. Their roofs sagged, and the doors hung open. "These cottages have long been abandoned," Wolfrid said as they continued on their horses. A child's doll floated face down in the water past Alba, its painted eyes worn away. Alba's nose wrinkled. "Why would the Lord want us to come this way?" Elias had a haunted expression. "I don't know. There's something he wants us to do here." Then suddenly, a stone struck Wolfrid's shoulder. Another hit Alba's staff with a crack. They spun, weapons ready. Small figures darted between the reeds. "Goblin children," Alba said. They were thin with bones visible under their graying skin. They hurled rocks not with malice, but with frantic urgency, as if trying to get their attention. Alba lifted her free hand and spoke in their language. Her words were soft, clicking syllables that carried through the marsh air like birdsong. The goblin children paused, startled, then chattered back. Alba's face tightened. "They say there is evil here," she translated. "They're trying to warn us away." Wolfrid scoffed, though his grip tightened on his shield. "Goblins warning us of evil? Don't make me laugh." Before Alba could argue, a cry echoed across the swamp. "Help!" The voice was of a human. Someone wounded. Elias moved before anyone could stop him, his horse splashing into shallow water. Wolfrid cursed and followed. Alba hurried after, her staff held tight. They pushed through reeds toward a patch of higher ground, where a man lay sprawled near a collapsed cottage. His armor was navy blue with a silver crest that made Alba's breath catch. "Veradin," she whispered. The knight's eyes were half open and unfocused as he lay doubled over on the ground, one gauntlet hand clawing weakly at the dirt. With a strained groan, he dragged himself forward inch by inch, blood smearing beneath him as he struggled to crawl toward the heroes, reaching for them in a desperate plea for help. There was a black spear lying next to him. It was black as night, its shaft carved with spiraling symbols. Elias dismounted and knelt down with his hands shaking. "We can save you. Wolfrid, you must heal this man." Alba and Wolfrid dismounted as well. The goblin children threw more rocks at them. They waved frantically, but the guardians ignored them. Did the goblins use this on him? Elias reached for the spear next to the injured knight. Pain exploded behind Elias's eyes as a blast of black lightning slammed into Elias's chest. He cried out, dropping to one knee. The world tilted. Alba reached for him, frost already gathering at her fingertips, but before she could get to him, the knight's body convulsed and a loud screech broke through the silence of the swamp. The flesh around the injury blackened. The man's limbs jerked like a puppet's. His skin grayed, stretching thin over bone. His eyes snapped open, glowing red. Fingers elongated into claws. Teeth sharpened into fangs. The transformation was swift and vile, like rot racing through fruit. A Helgrim rose from the mud. It moved with a terrible grace, shaking off swamp water as it stood to its full 7-foot height. The air around it felt heavy and oppressive. Wolfrid struck first, sword flashing toward its neck. The blade hit and skidded off as if the Helgrim's flesh were stone. The creature hissed. Elias's vision blurred again as the Helgrim's black lightning slammed into him once more. Elias clutched his head and gritted his teeth, trying to gather his strength. Physical strikes won't stop it, Alba shouted, eyes wide as she threw her hand forward and unleashed a frost bolt. Ice struck the Helgrim's chest, cracking its gray skin. The creature shrieked and staggered back. Wolfrid sheathed his sword and then lifted his palm outward. Something sacred flared there, not fire from wood or oil, but flame that carried a prayer in its heat. He hurled it like a bolt. The sacred flame slammed into the Helgrim's shoulder, burning through shadow flesh. The creature howled. The Helgrim lunged, claws sweeping. Wolfrid caught the blow on his shield, metal groaning. Alba let loose another frost bolt, slowing the creature's movement, but just for a moment. Wolfrid hurled another sacred flame bolt, forcing it to recoil. The Helgrim's empty eyes locked on Elias, who was on one knee. An easier target. Alba's eyes flicked to Elias, fear and understanding warring across her face. Before Alba could shout to get Elias' attention, the Helgrim lunged for Elias. Elias struggled upright, panting. He went to call for his horse to get his weapon, but his horse was nowhere to be found. At his feet, he saw the black spear that he had found next to the Helgrim. This will have to work. He gritted his teeth as his hand closed around the black spear. The moment his fingers touched it, pain laced up his arms once more. Sharp corruption raced through his skin. It's cursed, Elias gasped as he winced in pain from the black spear. Elias moved between Alba and Wolfrid's attacks like a thread weaving through needles. He lifted the spear. The Helgrim struck again, and Elias felt claws graze his shoulder, burning cold. When Elias released the spear, it tore through the air toward the Helgrim. The black spear pierced the Helgrim's torso. It shrieked, the sound ripping through the swamp like a storm siren. Elias pushed harder, twisting the spear. The Helgrim's red eyes flared, and then dimmed. He turned the spear until he heard a wet squelch, and the creature's body finally slumped. Elias fell to his knees beside it, breathing hard. The spear lay at his feet, its carvings pulsing faintly. Alba helped Elias to his feet. It would seem that evil does not choose sides, she said quietly. It destroys whatever it touches, even its own. Wolfrid stepped closer, face grim. He placed a hand on Elias's shoulder and murmured a prayer, voice low and urgent. He prayed words of purification and healing for the Lord to cleanse his wounded friend. Elias took a deep breath in as he felt the cursed injury heal under Wolfrid's palm. Alba stared at the dead Helgrim, then at the spear. That thing, she whispered. I had only read about cursed weapons in books at the monastery. Wolfrid smirked. I didn't know you could read. Alba's brow furrowed. This isn't the time for jokes. They searched the Helgrim's ruined armor, careful now, as if even touching it might invite the creature's curse to crawl into them. Inside a hidden lining, they found a thin sheet of parchment sealed with black wax. The seal bore the mark of the Daggers of Sorn, and beneath it, another symbol, a broken crown. Wolfrid broke the seal with the tip of his sword. The parchment unfurled to reveal more shadow speech. Alba translated slowly, each word making the air feel colder. It speaks of a temple, she said. The Shadow Sanctum. I don't recognize this from any of the monastery maps. She turned it over to Elias and Wolfrid. Wolfrid's face tightened. Perhaps it is a temple the Dark Lords don't want us to know about. The air around them seemed to chill even further. Let's get out of here, Alba said. We've already lingered here too long. When she turned to find their horses, they were gone. Alba's jaw clenched. I bet those goblin children took them. Elias stared out into the reeds where the goblins had vanished. Maybe, he said slowly, we were meant to find this. His eyes dropped to the spear, then to the parchment, and for a moment his expression looked older than 15. Wolfrid folded his arms. We cannot carry this spear or the black blade. The evil emanating from it will sicken us. We must purify these weapons and then consecrate them to the Lord. Should we not leave that to the priests in Veradin? Alba suggested. No, Wolfrid said. His mouth formed a thin line. Elias laid out the spear and the black dagger they had taken from the priest onto the soft grass. Together they prayed over the blades, watching as the miasma emanating from them dissipated with their words to the Lord. When they had finished, the spear was still black wood, but the dark runes were gone. Elias wrapped the weapons and stood. There is power in this spear, much greater than my old spear. He eyed the markings in it curiously. Come, we must get moving. Alba snorted, but her words didn't have the same edge they had earlier. Are you sure you know where you're going this time? Elias didn't answer right away. He folded the parchment carefully, hands still trembling, and tucked it into his cloak. The spear remained in his grip, dark and heavy. He gave her a small smile. Yes, but first we must find our horses. Not far from the sunken cottages, they found their horses grazing in the woods. Alba and Wolfrid searched their gear. Nothing is missing, Alba said. Perhaps the goblin children didn't steal our horses as I thought. After some time, they found a patch of higher ground beyond the swamp and made camp as night fell. They sat together by a small fire. Alba fed it with careful hands, while Wolfrid watched the treeline. Elias stared at the parchment as if it might bite him. He unfolded the priest's earlier report, the one that had tracked their journey, and at the bottom, beneath the last recorded milestone, was something new. Not a description, not a report. It was a prophecy. It was written in symbols that echoed the spear's spirals and the Helgrim's bone mark. Alba looked over Elias' shoulder at the parchment and hesitated as she traced the runes with her fingers. Wolfrid's voice was rough. Read it. Alba swallowed and translated, slow and careful, as if speaking it aloud would make another Helgrim appear. 3 run beneath borrowed moons. 1 carries flame. 1 carries frost. 1 carries lightning. When the shadow sanctum opens its maw, the land will remember its dead, and the living will envy them. Silence pressed in after she said the words. Flame, frost, and lightning, Wolfrid repeated. Could this be about us? Alba, Wolfrid, and Elias exchanged a look. The question fell over the crackling campfire, but no other words were spoken that night. Somewhere beyond the firelight, the swamp breathed. And somewhere farther still, unseen hands were already moving pieces on a board the guardians could barely understand. They did not sleep easily that night, and when they finally did, the shadows in their dreams wore spirals and spoke in a voice that beckoned them to the darkness. For 2 hours, the guardians of the realm pressed through the woods on horse, the looming trees closing around them like a tightening fist. Roots twisted beneath the leaf-choked ground, snagging hoofs and slowing their pace. Low branches clawed at their cloaks and armor, leaving damp streaks of moss and needles in their wake. The air was thick with the smell of wet earth and old decay, a scent that lingered in the lungs. No birds called. No insects hummed. Even the wind seemed unwilling to disturb the stillness. By the time the ground began to slope upward, their legs burned and sweat chilled against their skin. Alba pushed ahead without complaint, white hair sticking to her forehead beneath her hood. Wolfrid followed, jaw set, scanning the trees as though expecting enemies to emerge at any moment. Elias brought up the rear, tracking the sun's slow crawl through the canopy. The ascent eastward broke the forest's grip. Trees thinned, giving way to rock and scrub, and the air sharpened as the hill rose. At the crest, stone emerged from the mist like a remembered dream. A watchtower. It stood solitary against the sky, its gray blocks scarred by age and weather, banners of Veradin hanging limp along its parapet. Soldiers lined the wall above, silhouettes framed by pale daylight, helms turning as one when the guardians crested the hill. Above them, they heard the scrape of boots stop. Alba heard a bowstring tighten. The guardians halted instinctively, tension settling between them and the tower like a drawn blade. Wolfrid shifted his weight. Alba's grip tightened on her quarterstaff. Elias felt the moment stretch, fragile as glass. Then Elias stepped forward. Slowly, deliberately, Elias raised his hand. We come in the name of King Leonard. We are guardians of the realm, on a mission for the king. A soldier roughly slid over a slot of wood in the wooden gate's door. And how do we know you are who you say? Wolfrid held out his hand, and let the light strike the ring sitting in his hand. Gold flashed. The sigil of Leonis caught the sun, etched lines gleaming with quiet authority, the unmistakable seal of King Leonard. The effect was immediate. The soldier opened the creaking door. He stepped forward cautiously, eyes widening as he saw the sigil. Another removed his helm entirely, staring as though the ring itself might speak the words of the king. Murmurs rippled among the soldiers standing beside him, disbelief giving way to recognition. They lowered their weapons. The ring's authority is undeniable, the main soldier said. The king would not just give this to anyone. I am Darian, the head of the watch. We keep watch for Veradin, but faithfully serve King Leonard. We have received word of your mission. We did expect you much earlier. Our journey has been full of many surprises, Elias said carefully, unwilling to give up too much information. Darian's eyes narrowed, but he did not press the guardians for more. Moments later, Darian led them inside the tower to a sparse room. There was a table with a hand-drawn map of the realm. Darian named the bends in the road and the markers to watch for along the way. The split where an old stone bridge crossed the river, the low milestone half swallowed by weeds, the stand of wind-bent pines that marked Feldrin's outer lands. Darian rolled up the parchment and handed it to Elias. Stay off the western spur after dusk and avoid the river road entirely. Do not cross the bridge. There have been more incidents, and there are not enough of us on the watch to handle them all. The Daggers of Sorn are not the only ones that haunt the roads to Veradin. He lowered his voice. Be wary, guardians, for there are some who answer to no banner at all. And who would that be? Wolfrid asked. Darian shook his head. We haven't determined who they are or who they're working for, but what we do know is that crime has been on the rise. The guardians listened, committing every word to memory. When they moved on, the forest no longer pressed against them. The path ahead lay clear, the road set firm beneath their feet. Feldrin awaited them. The road divided without warning. One path sloped toward a broad stone bridge, its arches pale against the dark ribbon of river below. The water moved slowly, thick and heavy, reflecting the sky in dull, broken fragments. The bridge bore the marks of constant use, wagon ruts worn deep into the stone, moss creeping along its edges, guard posts standing watchful at either end. The other road curved away from Feldrin. It was narrower, quieter, its stones smoothed by countless footsteps rather than wheels. No sentries stood there. No banners marked the way. The guardians did not debate it. They turned away from the bridge as Darian had suggested. As they rode their horses, the days and nights blurred. Their world subtly shifted. The open land gave way to low stone walls and scattered sheds. The smell of river dampness faded, replaced by salt and old smoke drifting in from the harbor. The road dipped, then rose again, and then the city revealed itself. As they approached the city, Alba asked, "What city leaves its gates wide open and unguarded? Not merely unlocked or unattended, but fully open, iron-bound doors pressed wide against the walls as though no one had thought to close them. No guards challenged their approach. No voices called from above. The parapets were empty, the towers silent. The absence struck harder than any alarm. Alba slowed, her gaze lifting to the walls, reading the stone for signs of recent movement. Wolfrid's posture tightened, his attention drawn to the shadows beyond the gate where streets disappeared into dark alleys. There must be a reason, Elias offered, and it is likely not a good one. It is probably best we conceal our identities for now. They drew their hoods low and crossed the threshold into Feldrin. Inside, Feldrin felt muted, as though the city were holding its breath. Their footsteps echoed too loudly along narrow streets lined with shuttered windows. Some were barred from within. Others were cracked just enough to suggest eyes peered from behind them. The usual sounds of a port city, laughter, argument, the creak of rigging, were distant and subdued, swallowed by stone and fog. They moved carefully, neither rushing nor lingering. At the center of the city was a statue of an armored elven warrior. Wolfrid read the plaque that said, "In honor of Eldrin, who fell upon this ground with his 300 warriors." Here they faced the Dark Lord's armies, holding the line for 3 days and 3 nights. Though their strength was spent and their casualties many, they did not yield to the darkness. By their sacrifice, the enemy was broken, and Leonguard came to deliver the final blow. Alba read the ground, noting scuffed stone and the faint tracks of hurried passage. Elias marked the streets by instinct and memory, already fitting the city into the mental maps taught at the monastery. Wolfrid watched the rooftops, alert for movement that did not belong. With hoods still drawn and purpose held close, the guardians slipped deeper into the city's winding streets, carrying with them the uneasy certainty that whatever waited ahead already knew they had arrived. Feldrin's streets twisted like a net meant to snare the careless, but training guided their steps. The monastery masters had drilled their lessons deep, how cities revealed themselves through movement rather than signs. The naval quarter announced itself long before the harbor came into view. The smell of brine thickened the air. Ropes creaked somewhere unseen. Seagulls cried overhead, their calls sharp and accusing. Warehouses crowded the streets now, their doors banded with iron, their walls stained dark by years of spray and smoke. At the edge of the harbor stood the harbor authority. Inside, the air was close and heavy with ink and old paper. A man sat behind a wide desk stacked high with leather-bound ledgers, their spines cracked from use. He did not look up when they entered. Access papers. The words were flat, practiced. Elias did not reach for parchment. Instead, Wolfrid placed the ring on the desk. Gold caught the lamplight. The sigil of Leonis gleamed, unmistakable and impossible to deny. The man's breath hitched. His eyes widened, and he pushed back from the desk so quickly his chair scraped the floor. For a moment, he could only stare. Then, with trembling hands, he gestured toward a side door and beckoned them to follow. They were led through a narrow corridor and up a short flight of stairs into a room that smelled faintly of oil and steel. The captain waited there. She was tall, her long hair braided tightly down her back, silver threaded through the dark strands. Her uniform bore no unnecessary ornament. When she listened to the guardians, she did not interrupt. "Issue a red pass to them immediately," she said. "I have heard word from the king about the guardians of the realm." She turned toward them then, her gaze steady, her voice lowering. "He will give you a red pass. Use it to go through the red gate. Do not veer anywhere else in Veradin. We continue to fight the dark forces, but there are so few of us now. This is why the gates are unguarded. With Leonguard under siege, there is no hope for reinforcements. There are many spies in the city that we have not been able to track down. Do not trust anyone." The warning lingered as she escorted them back into the street. "Be careful, guardians. Your mission to Veradin must not fail." The red gate stood apart from the others, its iron bars dark with age and rust, the stone around it scarred by countless hands. 3 rough-looking guards blocked the way, armor mismatched, eyes sharp with suspicion. They held up a hand. Elias handed the tallest of the guards their red pass. Grudgingly, the guards stepped aside, the gate groaning open just enough to allow passage. Beyond it rose the Leonguard consulate. Green banners hung from its stone facade, worn but carefully kept. Soldiers stood watch at the entrance, and the moment the guardians stepped into view, recognition flashed across their faces. One guard straightened and snapped a salute. "Thank God you live. The news we heard caused us great alarm when we heard the great monastery had been attacked." Relief settled over the guardians as the guards ushered them inside. They were finally among allies, and at the heart of it all, waiting beyond the stairs, was Lieutenant Dragar. The stairs to the upper hall were worn smooth at their centers, stone polished by generations of boots. Torchlight flickered along the walls as the guardians climbed, the warmth above a stark contrast to the unease they had carried through Veradin's streets. At the top stood Lieutenant Dragar. He was broad-shouldered and tall, his heavy chainmail darkened by age and use rather than neglect. Plates of armor reinforced his shoulders and chest, each bearing shallow dents that told their own stories. His presence filled the space, not through menace, but through stillness, like a man accustomed to standing firm while chaos broke around him. Wolfrid leaned just enough to murmur, "He's not all that intimidating." Elias did not look at him when he replied, "Hush up." If Dragar heard them, he gave no sign. Instead, he inclined his head in greeting and motioned them forward, his voice calm, his manner open. Orders were given, swift and efficient, and soon the long table was laid. Food arrived in generous measure, bread crusted and warm, bowls of stew rich with herbs, roasted meat glazed and steaming. The scent alone seemed to ease something tight in their chests. As they ate, the noise of the world receded. Plates were filled again before they were empty. Cups were never dry. During the meal, the guardians spoke. They told of the shipwreck, the helplessness of being cast ashore by a merciless sea. They recounted the rockslide on the road, stone and earth collapsing without warning. They spoke of the shield maiden, who had come to their aid. "Fortunate are you, guardians," Dragar said, "that a shield maiden was dispatched. Our enemies grow stronger by the day. We need as many allies on our side as possible." Dragar nodded for Elias to continue. Dragar listened to the rest of the story without interruption, his expression grave. Elias described the Black Dagger priest who tried to poison them, and the moment betrayal revealed itself. Finally, they told of Brimhaven and the innkeeper's attack. When they finished, he nodded once. "Your rooms have been prepared. Rest your weary bones for now. We leave before the sun rises." That night, the guardians slept deeply. For the first time in many days, no one kept watch. Morning came clear and cold. Armor was donned, weapons checked. Dragar and his soldiers waited in the courtyard, mounted and ready. The city gates opened at their approach, and Veradin fell away behind them as they rode out together. For 3 days and nights, they traveled the Veradin highway. The road climbed steadily, winding between rising stone and sweeping sky. Peaks appeared in the distance, jagged and pale, growing closer with each league. The air thinned. The horizon widened. With every mile, hope took firmer root. They rode not as fugitives now, but as those who believed, perhaps too soon, that they might yet reach Veradin in time. Morning mist clung to the road, beating on armor and cloaks as the company broke camp. The mountains loomed closer now, their peaks jagged and pale against a washed-out sky. Even the horses seemed restless, stamping and snorting as if they sensed what waited ahead. They had just begun to move when the road narrowed, and 6 hooded figures appeared, blocking the way. They sat astride their mounts without urgency, cloaks hanging still despite the breeze. No banners marked them. No voices called out. The air itself felt wrong, heavy and cold, as though something foul had settled into the space between breaths. Dragar rode forward alone. He raised the royal pass high, his voice carrying down the road as he demanded they stand aside. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. The figures did not move. They did not answer. Then realization struck Dragar. Helgrim's. One of the riders surged forward, drawing a blade wreathed in black-blue flame. It screamed as it cut the air, striking Dragar again and again, the force of each blow shuddering through his armor. Sparks burst where steel met steel. Dragar staggered, barely managing to parry as the cursed fire licked at his defenses. Around them, the world descended into chaos. Elias hurled lightning that cracked and arced, leaving scorched earth in its wake. The runes in his black staff glowed blue as he wielded it against the enemy. Wolfrid answered with sacred flame, bolts of flame tearing through shadowed flesh. Alba moved like winter-given form, her quarterstaff snapping limbs, frost racing across corrupted bodies before shattering them apart. The stench was overwhelming. Putrid rot burned and melted, filling the air as the Helgrim screamed in fury. One after another fell, collapsing into steaming ruin. As they pressed deeper into the fray, Elias shouted over the clash of steel and the roar of flame. We barely held our own against one Helgrim the last time. Now we have to fight 6 of them. Alba answered without slowing, her voice strained but fierce as she struck again. And what of it? We won last time. We'll win this time too. She leapt forward, driving into the press of enemies. Then the largest Helgrim turned. It loomed over the others, its presence crushing, its form barely held together by writhing shadow. When it screamed, the sound tore through the battlefield like a blade. It swung its battle axe and slammed it into all 3 of the guardians. The black miasma from the weapon sent bolts of pain through their bodies. The ground gave way beneath the guardians' feet. Roots snapped and ground tore as they tumbled down the ravine. In an instant, their bodies crashed through brush and rock before slamming hard into the thicket below. Pain flared white-hot through their bodies. Ah, Alba groaned. He sent us flying with one blow. Above them, the battle raged on, swords ringing, fire roaring, screams echoing off the ravine walls. Dragar appeared moments later, hauling them up with brute strength and sheer will. His armor was scorched, his breath ragged, but his grip was iron. His voice cut through the chaos. My men are holding off the remaining Helgrims for us to get away. They ran. For 6 hours without rest, they fled through forest and broken ground, lungs burning, muscles screaming. Fatigue threatened to drag them down with every step. Yet Dragar drove them onward. Though he was older and his armor heavier, he refused to slow down. By the time the lights of Fardale appeared, they were barely standing. They collapsed into an inn, gulping water and tearing at food with shaking hands. Do not speak, Dragar said. We do not know who is listening. Their time of rest did not last. Screams erupted from the town's front. A Helgrim screech cut through the night, raw and inhuman. They fled again through the streets, past shuttered homes, into the woods beyond. They ran until the land rose sharply, and a narrow cave passage yawned open in the mountain's side. Dragar stopped. The tunnel, he said, would lead through the mountain to the other side, but only one person could pass at a time. I will stay and guard the entrance, Dragar said. They protested, words tumbling over one another, but Dragar's expression hardened, unyielding. You are not the only soldiers of the realm. Elias stepped forward, pressing his lightning spear into Dragar's hands. Elias kept the black spear taken from the first Helgrim, its weight cold and powerful in its hilt. This spear has served me well, Elias said. We will meet again. Dragar clasped his arm. Wolfrid and Alba said their goodbyes. Do not fear, children. It will take more than some skeleton to get rid of me. They clasped forearms once again. A single look passed between them, and then they parted ways. The guardians entered the tunnel. A Helgrim's screech pierced the air. Dragar turned toward it, his knuckles white as he clasped Elias' spear. The guardians ran into the tunnel, leaving the echoes of Dragar's battle behind them. Darkness swallowed them whole. Wolfrid's hand burst into flame, and he smiled. "At least we won't be lost in the dark," Alba said. "Had you known how to do this earlier, perhaps that crawler wouldn't have almost killed us." Wolfrid rolled his eyes and led the way down the tunnel. It stretched forward seemingly without end, a narrow cut through the mountain's heart. The walls pressed close on either side, damp and cold, the air thick with mineral dust and the faint metallic tang of old blood. Every footstep echoed too loudly, as if the mountain itself were listening. Wolfrid raised his hand, and sacred flame blossomed to life. The light spilled outward in warm gold, pushing back the darkness just enough to reveal the uneven path ahead. Shadows clung stubbornly beyond its reach, retreating but never leaving entirely. They walked in silence, each step measured. Time lost meaning in the tunnel. Distance blurred. The flame was the only constant. Then the light caught something wrong. An overturned cart lay ahead, its wooden frame splintered, one wheel snapped clean through. Crates lay broken open, their contents spilled across the ground. There was cloth, tools, and small personal effects that had been abandoned in haste. The tunnel widened farther on, the ceiling lifting just enough for Wolfrid's flame to reveal a platform running the length of the passage above them. Stonework deliberately carved, not natural. Darkness pooled there, heavier than the rest, clinging as though it had weight. An evil miasma lingered overhead. They felt it then. A presence. A pressure. They were being watched. Wolfrid slowed and looked up. "We have to face it. There's no place to run in here." Elias followed his gaze, eyes narrowing as he measured the height and distance. His voice was quiet, controlled. "Perhaps we could sneak past it." Wolfrid shook his head once, the decision already made. "And leave it to attack someone else?" The words settled between them like a vow. Compelled by the spirit, Wolfrid climbed up the platform. Stone scraped beneath his boots as he hauled himself onto the platform. The flame's light surged upward, and the darkness recoiled, revealing the Helgrim. It was larger than any they had faced before, its form swollen and warped, shadow barely containing its bulk. Its presence crushed the air, and when it moved, stone groaned beneath its weight. The fight was brutal and confined. There was no room for sweeping blows, no space to retreat. Wolfrid's sword rang against cursed flesh. Frost from Alba's hands crackled and burst. Elias' lightning flared, filling the tunnel with blinding white flashes that left shadows burned into the eyes. The Helgrim struck again and again, each blow threatening to send them tumbling into the abyss below. At last, Elias drove the black spear forward. The point punched through the Helgrim's chest, piercing the corruption at its core. The creature convulsed, letting out a final, tearing scream before collapsing inward, its form unraveling into smoke and rot that dissipated into nothing. They did not linger. They ran. The tunnel sloped upward, the air thinning with each step until suddenly, light broke through ahead, cold, clean, and real. They emerged onto the far side of the mountain into open land and straight into the line of raised weapons. Soldiers of Veradin surrounded them, armor gleaming, expressions hard with suspicion. Even when Elias raised the king's seal, the tension did not ease. A figure stepped forward from among them, posture rigid, eyes sharp with authority. "Lord Corvin," he said. His eyes landed on their green cloaks. "And you are the guardians of the realm." Lord Corvin's soldiers never lowered their weapons as the guardians told their story. Lord Corvin listened. "Your master Christine was a great friend of mine. I was deeply saddened to hear what happened to the monastery. You have my deepest condolences." He bowed his head, and then his soldiers finally lowered their weapons. Lord Corvin ordered a coach for them. Then, he formed an escort around them. By the 25th day, Veradin revealed itself. White stone rose directly from the mountainside, towers and walls carved as though the city had been shaped from the rock itself. Light caught its surfaces, making it gleam like something set apart from the world below. At the gates, the king's guard stepped forward. The black spear and the black dagger were taken from the guardian's hands, removed with careful distance and solemn expressions. Though told the curse had been broken, the guards insisted on their own examination. Certainty mattered here. The guardians passed into Veradin unarmed and weary, but relieved. "We have arrived," Elias said finally. And though the road behind them was finally closed, the war waiting ahead had only just begun. We would like to thank each and every one of you for watching. If you enjoy the video and want to see more, we humbly ask that you give this video a thumbs up, share it with others, and help get it out there to more people. Please comment and subscribe. It motivates us to make more stories. Special shout-outs to the Christian Collective Stories, Money in Marathons, Tammy, I9K, Dr. Cortez Learns, and O Online for being faithful watchers, commenters, and supporting our stories.